Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, the 14th of September, and it's 1 o'clock. And we'll go ahead and get today's Transportation Technical Coordinating meeting underway. I am Jeff O'Brien. I am with Louisville Metro Government, and I am the chairman for TTCC. So if we can go around the room and introduce ourselves, that'd be great.
Larry Cheney with KIPTA.
Matt Minier, City of Jeffersontown.
Justin Tackett, Floyd County.
Brittany Montgomery, Town of Clarksville.
Brian Dixon, Clark County.
Scott Stewart, Port of Indiana.
Aida Kopik, TAC.
Shell King, Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control District.
John Callahan, Louisville Metro.
Emily Leo, Louisville Metro Planning and Design Services.
Thomas with KYTC.
Antonio Johnson, Federal Highway, Indiana Division.
Tom Hall, KYTC District 5 Planning.
Travis Thompson, KYTC District 5.
Nancy Snow Tark, Regional Mobility Council.
Keith Griffey, Bullitt County.
Bob Stein, United Consulting.
Oh, Tanya Dickey, KYTC Planning.
Chris Allen, KYTC District 5.
Rachel Henry, H&B.
Adam Dickey, HMB.
Ashley Davidson, KIPTA.
Zach Herzog, KIPTA.
Adam Forsyth, KIPTA.
David Burton, KIPTA.
Mary Lou Halbert with KIPTA. Lori Kelsey with KIPTA.
Rick Vale, KIPTA. Andy Rush, KIPTA.
Sarah Bear, KIPTA. Amanda Defford with KIPTA.
Larry Summers, City of New Albany. Spencer Robinson, Rockmore.
Brian Mead, AECOM.
Jeff Schaefer, HDR.
Greg Butler, Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control.
John Callahan, Louisville Metro again.
Lori Pacino, City of Mount Washington.
Barry Armstrong, City of Mount Washington.
Dirk Goins, Public Works.
Yeah, that's me.
You guys did a flip-flop on me there. Okay, great. Thank you all. Welcome. First order of business today is to review the minutes from July 13th, 2016. So taken that everybody's reviewed those minutes, and if anybody has any comments or changes, going once, going twice, get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Get a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item on our agenda today is the public comment period. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to make comments? This is your time to do so. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to number 4. Mr. Burton, you are going to get up and talk to us about the project management process, correct?
Yes, I am. You guys
All right.
are very excited and can't wait to hear about it. I have copies in case someone needs them. Lori told me to charge you each $10 a copy if you would like it.
Well worth it.
In just a second, we're going to start talking about this. Basically, what we are here to talk about today is an effort that's taken about a year to complete. It's been a process to try to improve the management of the dedicated funds to the KIPTA, federal funds to the KIPTA area. So we're going to start with this particular document. Back in October 2015, Mary Lou Halbert introduced to you a concern that KIPTA staff had, primarily relative to the STP Urban Funds for Kentucky, or the SLO funds. For instance, what Mary Lou had explained to you was that the SLO funds had a history of being delayed that often resulted in some fiscal problems with the overall SLO program, and that we needed to take a hard look at that. So what we talked about doing was taking a year to actually take a hard look at that and figure out what we can do. During that year, we would freeze the ability to have cost increases or add new projects to the SLO program. So that's sort of where we are now. That year has passed, almost. And it has resulted in 2 draft documents for your consideration. The KIPTA project management process for the Indiana side of the river, and project management process for this side of the river as well. Both of them focusing on STP urban funds that are dedicated to the MPO. So what we're going to do now is just sort of step through some of these things that this new process introduces. And so, beginning with the front portion of this document, the summary of the document states pretty much what the goals were, which was to enhance the TIP by supporting the plan, to attain the targets that have been identified in the performance management plan, to ensure that the projects in the TIP advance in a timely manner, and most importantly is to make sure that we have a process in place that will ensure and will expedite community benefits from the funds that are programmed in the TIP that use STP urban funds that are dedicated to our area, primarily STP Indiana and SLO. So in your packet that was made available to you was a summary sheet. And I'm going to step through that with you. If you have that, that'd be great. Does everyone have a copy of the summary sheet? We're just going to sort of step through each page of that, and I want to highlight a couple of things that I think are pretty important that you are aware of as we go forward with this process. Let's begin with the fact that I'm sure you all have gone through this summary sheet in great detail and pretty well versed in what it contains. One of the things that's really important, and you'll notice on page 1 at the bottom, there's a time frames that have been identified for completing the processes as a result of this new project management process. The time that we normally, up until now, to complete a TIP has taken about 6 months. Now we're thinking it's going to take about 9 months. To complete a TIP amendment, it's been about 5 months. Now we're looking at about 7. And administrative modifications taken about a month. Now we're looking at a possible 3 months, up to 3 months to complete those 3 key elements of the process. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that as we go forward, along with the other things that are also very important on this first page. If you flip to page 2, there are a couple of things we want to make sure to point out to you. The very first item states that, as before, the funds are available to all project sponsors. That hasn't changed. That will continue. The new process also sets up project working groups. And we've gone that when we met with a project management process working group, this particular issue took up a lot of time during the discussion. And the intent is to make sure with this working group is to help advise the policy committee and the technical committee on what are the projects that have the potential for advancing as they are intended and will meet the priorities and goals that have been established by the policy committee. So this project working group basically has 2 responsibilities. They're going to look at the applications and the processes that are identified when someone submits an application. They're going to make sure, using their expertise, that the schedules and the cost estimates are reasonable. And then they're going to look at the project and then compare it to the TPC goals that are found in the MTP and the performance targets that are part of the performance management plan, and advise the technical committee on the impacts that the projects that are being proposed will have on those 2 areas. The MTP is going to, and the KIPTA performance management plan are sort of the second and third blocks that you'll find on page 2. They have a much greater role in this process than they have in the past. The MTP is going to be directly used to identify the goals and objectives and the priorities within the TIP. And then the performance management plan is something new that you should be well aware of by now, but that's going to take a larger role in identifying which projects go forward in the TIP. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to stop me. Okay, let's turn to page 3. This is a significant change that is being introduced relative to the current process. We will be setting up a general fund. And from that general fund, we will try to program and advance projects. Okay, we will not fund cost increases from the general fund because we are setting up a cost increase reserve. And we get an annual allocation each year, and that annual allocation, the cost increase reserve will be taken from that annual allocation to form the general fund. Now that's on the Kentucky side, that's with SLO. On Indiana, there is no cost increase reserve. Because there are so few funds available, we could not justify the idea of having a cost increase reserve that would reduce the availability of funds for programming projects. So the new process does set up a general fund for both the Indiana and the Kentucky sides. Okay, the second item there is this cost increase reserve. In Kentucky, 20% of the annual allocation will be set aside to fund cost increases. That's the only source for covering cost increases. It will not come out of the general fund. The general fund, the intent is to make sure that the general fund remains unencumbered, so that projects that are programmed in the general fund can advance as they are intended, without running into possible barriers relative to other projects having cost increases that then has that domino effect of projects having to shift phases or move or advance in order to make sure that we can stay physically constrained. So we're basically clearing the path for projects that are programmed to advance as intended without any problems from other projects. That's what the cost increase reserve is. Another item we're adding is placeholder funds. Now, these have not been defined, but basically, these are like various projects that are in the current TIP. And it's up to the policy committee to determine what are these placeholders that we want to have in our new TIP process, and how much will be dedicated toward using those funds for the types of projects that are identified for a placeholder. So, with the annual allocation that we get every year, I'm going to just make up a number and say, let's say we get $5 million every year. Well, 20% of that is $1 million, so that would be set aside. Let's say the TPC then says we want to put another $1 million aside for a placeholder. So that's $2 million that's being pulled aside. We started off with a $5 million annual allocation, and we're going to have $3 million general fund. Okay? To make sure that those projects that are supposed to advance on schedule can and will advance on schedule. Now, if the funds in a given year, let's say we're talking about 2018, we don't use all of those cost increase funds that are made available in the cost increase reserve, that unspent balance in 18 rolls into 19. Into the 19 general fund to be made available for all projects. Same thing with the placeholders. Okay, let's turn to page 4. If you look at the SLO column right there, we have applying for funds, cost increases, and cost increase exceptions. So that the SLO side you have to provide, or you have to complete an application for each of those steps. On the cost, on managing costs for the SLO funds, no phase of a new project being introduced to the TIP can exceed 50% of the general fund. Okay, you get that? So in our example we had before, where we ended up with $3 million in our general fund, no phase of any new project being introduced to the TIP using SLO funds can exceed $1.5 million. Let's see. This cost increase, each project is limited to 20%. A 20% cost, up to 20% of the phase that it has the cost increase. No more, hopefully we won't be looking at these situations where we have phases that double. And what happens if you cannot? If you need more than 20%, there are two possibilities that can happen. You can file for a cost increase exception, which means you plead your case to the Transportation Policy Committee and say, look, these are things that I could not have accounted for, I could not have been aware of, and they are critical to the project. I need a greater amount than 20%. So the TPC will either grant you your exception or deny you your exception. Any way you look at it, cost increase funds only come out of the cost increase reserve, nowhere else. The other portion is if I need more than 20% of federal funds cost increase, you can use other funds, your local funds, state funds, bake sale, whatever you need to do in order to get that project funded. If that's not an option for you, then that phase of your project and all subsequent phases will shift to the future until a time that the funds can be made available to proceed with that phase and all subsequent phases. For Indiana, not so much. You do have to complete an application for a project or a cost increase. There is no limit on the amount of cost increase. And the source of the cost increase funds is the general fund. Now we need to point out, and I'm going to try to help me on this one a little bit, why we are treating Indiana so much differently than we are Kentucky side. First of all, there's only a certain amount of money. There's much less money available. How much are we?
About $2.4 million STD.
Okay, $2.4 million a year. And here comes the real fun part. NDOT is very restrictive with how those funds are programmed and obligated. So if you program a phase of a project in 2018 and you do not obligate that phase in 2018, those funds go away. They don't go back to the pot, they go to the state and they go away. So we've got to make sure we do everything we can to get those projects to advance, because we do not want to be in a position where we have to find a process that actually results in the area losing funds. So that's why we're treating the two states differently. Page 5, we're almost done. When we look at the schedule component of the SLO process, you may shift any phase of a project twice, in 1 year increments. If you have to shift the third time, or for a greater period of time, you can again go for that exception, just like with the cost increase, and plead your case to the policy committee and get the approval to do a third time or over a greater period of time. If you are not granted that exception and your project cannot advance as you had originally programmed, then that particular phase and all subsequent phases will go into the future year. What we don't want to have happen is if these cost increases and these phase shifts creating barriers for other projects to advance. If you're not going to use the money, then let's let somebody else take advantage of it and move forward. Let's the funds that are in our area, let's increase community benefit. With the Indiana side, yes, you have to complete an application, but there are no limits on the number of times you can shift, because you can't shift. There is no shifting. So shift it as long as you want, as long as you don't exceed 0. All right. The next piece is talks about the future phase. Right now in Kentucky, we have, what was the number, Mary? It was $75 million of funds or phases that are identified in the future. What this process sets up is a 6-year funding pot of available funds for scheduling phases within that future phase. So what that basically means is if we have $50 million in that pot, we want to try to keep the balance of the phases that are scheduled in that future phase below $50 million. That's our goal. If it's above $50 million, we're not going to go looking for new projects. We're going to be looking to bring phases out of that pot and advance them into the 4-year program so that we can move those projects forward. Let's see. Is everyone doing okay so far? We got 2 more to go, we're done. Okay. Under the funding availability, on page 6, there's the whole NOFA issue, or what we've called in the past a call for projects, a notice of funding availability, which will be issued annually for each of the two states. And what will happen is, if there are funds that are identified in the general fund that might be available for new projects, we want to look at the phases that are in the future first and make sure they have an opportunity to advance before we issue a NOFA. And if you issue a NOFA, that means we're looking for new projects. But the priority is the future first. Let's get the projects that are already in the plan, in the tip, moving and have them advance. One of the things we've introduced is found on page 7, which is sort of interesting. It is a pre-submittal funding application review. We've talked to the cabinet and everybody's, and they've agreed to sit down with any project sponsor who wants to propose a project to review the schedules and cost increases or the costs that they've identified for a potential project to enter into the tip. We really like this. We hope everyone will take advantage of it because it gives a better grounding for a project and reduces cost increases and unnecessary phase shifting. We have introduced reviews, formal reviews for new projects that are being introduced to the tip. That's through the project working group, TTCC, and other things. That's all found on page 7. And then we have a review process that we've introduced for projects that has a very thorough review. And finally, we do project tracking to make sure that projects are advancing as they were intended, and to help identify any problems that people may have so that we can work together to try to overcome them. And then the last page has to do with the administrative modification schedule and amendment schedule that we've already talked about earlier. So that's the summary sheet. We tried to highlight some of the pieces that we think are important. In the memo that went out to you, Mr. Chairman, we requested 2 action items. The first was adoption, or to recommend to the policy committee adoption of the SDP Indiana project management process and the SDP, or the SLO, the project management process, 2 separate processes. And then, if the TTCC is able to do so, and to approve those 2 documents, or recommend to approve those 2 documents, we'd like the TTCC to consider recommending to the policy committee that the freeze that exists on the SLO program be lifted, contingent on the adoption by the policy committee of these 2 processes.
So you want 2 separate motions, one for Indiana and one for Kentucky, and then are you asking for a motion today on lifting the freeze, or is that after TTC?
No, if the policy committee approves the recommendation, take these to the policy committee. The technical committee approves the recommendation of the policy committee, then we also want the technical committee to approve the recommendation to lift the freeze contingent on the TTC adoption of these documents.
Gotcha. Excellent. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on either of the project management processes that were described? I know we've had a lot of working group meetings and discussions on those policies, so thank you, David and Larry, for those processes.
And thank all of the people who participated in that as well. It was a really, really well attended, all of the meetings, and we had a lot of good discussions. I think we've come up with something that hopefully we can all live with.
Okay, with that, I will take a motion on the STP Indiana project management process first. We have a motion.
So moved.
Have a second? Second. All right. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then our SLO project management process. Can I get a motion for the SLO project management process?
So moved.
Thank you. I have a second?
Second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. There you go.
Third piece, one more, to recommend lifting
Oh,
the freeze contingent upon the adoption of the two documents by the policy committee.
okay. So do we have a motion to lift the freeze pending the approval of both of those documents?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you very much, David. Our next item is the Kentucky STP funding priorities. Mary Lou, you would
All right, thank you.
come forward.
All right, so we just talked about a new process for using the SLO funds, and we recently had a project review meeting on August 31st to look at all the projects and make adjustments to the projects prior to this process being enacted. So a revised spreadsheet was included in your meeting packets, and for anybody who printed it in 8.5 by 11 and can't read it, I did make some comments because it's hard enough to read on 11 by 17 if you need one. You look like you might need one. That might be one. Here, pass them out to whoever might need some over that way. And I have a few more if anybody does. So this revised spreadsheet was in your packet, and I do apologize for it being printed so tiny, but it has grown in size now. But some things to note on it. First of all, our annual allocation of funds has increased a little bit. So instead of receiving, what we used to get was $17 million a year, KYTC has increased that to $17.7 million now. Amanda Spencer informed us of that. And we are, something else to note is that I'm also in the process of developing a new transportation improvement program at TIP, and that document will span fiscal year 2017 to fiscal year 2020. So we were able to add 2 additional years of funding onto the program. So first we had to find out what all had been obligated or was in the process of being obligated in fiscal year 2016. Fiscal year 2016 is ending September 30th, and KYTC is busily trying to get everything obligated or authorized that can be. But we did really well this year. We obligated approximately $16.8 million, and that's a lot. That's a lot of projects. Then the next thing is we got a rough dollar amount to use as our carryover to fiscal year 2017, and but it'll be finalized after the close of 2016. So it was just a rough number to go with so that we could have our meeting and program some projects. So then we shifted the projects and adjusted the costs, and I'm going to tell you almost every project on the list had a change of some sort. I'm not going to go through every single project on here because we would be here till 4 o'clock probably. But I will say no new projects were added to the program, and we ended with a balance of about $35,000. And but some of the changes that I will mention are English Station Road, the construction moved from 2018 to 2020. Hubbard's Lane construction moved from 2018 to 2019. LaGrange Underpass the construction moved from 2018 to 2019. Several segments of the Northeast Louisville Loop project, we were adding the construction in fiscal year 2019. The Ohio River Levee Trail Phase 3, we added construction in 2020. And the River Road widening project, the construction moved from 2017 to 2019. Now, all of these changes will be incorporated into into the TIP, either through administrative modification if they can be, or I'll include those that can't be. Since I won't be doing an amendment, they'll be included with the new TIP update. So I'll try to answer any questions that you have on it, and action is requested to recommend approval of the revised list.
Any questions or comments for Mary Lou?
And certainly, if anyone sees that I may have gotten something wrong in here, we were a little busy that day trying to get it all taken care of at the meeting. But if anything looks wrong, just shoot me an email or call me and we'll work through it.
Okay. We'll have a motion to approve the Kentucky SLO funding priorities.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Mary Lou, I have a sneaking suspicion you're going to tell us about Indiana dedicated
Next,
funding
yeah.
priorities.
Don't get rid of me that easily. Okay, so just like we had a Kentucky meeting, we also had an Indiana project review meeting to look at the 5-year plan, which is what we call their program of projects for STP, CMAQ, HSIP, and the TAP program. So because we're beginning a new TIP, again, we were able to add 2 years of funding onto the program. And and again, the new TIP will be 2017 to 2020, and then this program then would include all of those years. The spreadsheet, again, was in the packet. I have a few copies of these if you can't read yours. I didn't make as many this time, but there are a few. It's hard to read, but it's not quite as hard as the SLO program. But, and we didn't have
Really?
nearly,
Do you have any extras?
yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we reviewed all the projects in 2017 and 2018, and I can say that the only change in those 2 years, those were the existing years, was to delete the right-of-way phase in fiscal year 2017 for Veterans Parkway Phase 2 in Jeffersonville. Jeffersonville is going to be using their own local funds to complete that project. Then we added projects in 2019 and 2020. We added the Ticket to Ride program in 19 and 20, and we added the Heavy Haul Road in fiscal year 2019. Those were STP funds. And then the other, there are no other projects actually shown individually in 2019 or 2020. We have placeholders that are on there for, in the STP program that's at the top of the spreadsheet, we have a placeholder for the funds in 2020. Then for next is the CMAQ funding, and we have a placeholder in 2019 and 2020. And for TAP funds, placeholder for 2019 and 2020, and the same thing for the HSIP. So we will be having calls for applications coming up soon. I don't know exactly when. CMAQ is probably going to be in November. I believe those applications, if the schedule hasn't changed and I haven't seen a new schedule, that one is set by NDOT and FHWA. But probably in November, I think the applications are due in January. So be looking for that, and actually be thinking about possible projects. And then STP, I think it will either be late October or very early November. And TAP, I believe TAP was pretty late.
Yeah, we're
Like January, I think, so. Okay, so be thinking about projects for those funding sources, and we will be issuing a NOFA, as David called it. So I will try to answer any questions that you might have on any of these projects that are on here. Action is requested to accept the report.
Thank you, Mary Lou. Any questions or concerns? Okay, I can get a motion to accept the.
Actually, it's to approve the priorities.
To approve, I thought I said it wrong, thank you.
No, I said it wrong.
To approve the Indiana dedicated funding priorities. Can I get a motion, please? And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much, Mary Lou. Okay, next on the agenda is Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plans. Amanda.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Amanda Dethridge. I'm here to present a biannual review on the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan. Let the TV warm up a little bit. I do have a handout that I put on the table for everybody. It's kind of the grid looking 5310 funding recipients in the Clifton region. If anybody around the edges of the room would like a copy, I've got a few left. Just let me know. All right, let's get started. All right, so let's just do a little refresher on what is the coordinated plan. It's a plan that seeks to enhance mobility for our targeted populations of older adults and persons with disabilities. It was the first plan to encompass the entire KIPTA region, all 5 NPO counties, and all of the AD counties. So that's Jefferson, Bullitt, Oldham, Trimble, Henry, Shelby, and Spencer in Kentucky, and Clark and Floyd in Indiana. And at the time, it did fulfill the MAP 21 requirement for federal funding for Section 5310. And it was adopted 2 years ago by TPC in June 2014. And we did do a whole public review process at the time. It involved input from multiple agencies throughout the region. So today we're here to talk about the biannual review of this plan. Now, what is the biannual review? Well, first, we reviewed the document itself and made minor changes to the document. Then we checked on what's been done in the region since the plan was adopted 2 years ago. Next, we assessed the progress that we made towards meeting the plan's goals. And lastly, we evaluated whether a full update to the plan is needed in the near future. So first, let's start with the minor changes. The most obvious one is since the plan was adopted, MAP 21 was replaced by the latest Federal Transportation Act, the FAST Act, that took effect last year. Now, there were only some minor changes to Federal Section 5310 because of the FAST Act. The most major change was a pilot program for innovative projects to enhance access and mobility specifically for our targeted populations. So examples of those types of projects that the FAST Act is looking for in this pilot program would be a deployment of a coordination technology or projects that increase access to the community, such as one-call centers. And we do encourage some of these smaller agencies to seek out innovation solutions to mobility challenges in order to receive this additional funding from the pilot program. We also checked on, there's a section in the document of all of our transportation service providers in the region, and we ensured all of their contact information was still valid, the costs, the hours of operation, minor stuff like that. We did make some changes, but nothing major was added. Some other changes made. At the time when the plan was adopted 2 years ago, the most recent population data available was the 2008 to 2012 American Community Survey estimates. So now the 2010 to 2014 estimates are out, so we updated them. As expected, there weren't really a lot of changes. Every county, pretty much the populations increased a little bit, both the overall population and the populations of our targeted, the older adults and people with disabilities. We also did some other minor changes, edited the text for grammar, odd phrasing. We're working on inserting higher quality maps, redoing some of the tables and figures just to make them a little better quality. But the important thing to remember is the content of the document is the same. So no public review is going to be needed in order to accept these edits to the document. All right, now that we've finished talking about the changes, next let's talk about what's been done, the most important part, what's been done in the region since the plan was adopted the last 2 years. So in the last 2 years, 15 agencies in the region have received funding, 5310 funding. These are the agencies. TARC obviously is the biggest one. The others You can see them here. Our smaller agencies, you've probably heard of a few of them: Catholic Charities, Louisville Wheels, the PAL Service, New Hope Services, ROUC. They've all received funding in the last 2 years using the 5310 funding. And 19 programs from those 15 agencies were funded. In the last 2 years, we have purchased or replaced 21 wheelchair accessible vehicles, purchased or replaced 10 regular vehicles to transport agency clients to and from medical appointments and whatnot. And TARC also received funding to expand service to the TARC 3 eligible consumers who either live or work outside of their service area. So in the last 2 years, the amount of funding allocated was just over $1 million. Or in fiscal year 13 and 14, I'm sorry, it was just over $1 million. In fiscal year 14 and 15, it was just under $1 million, so about 1.9 million was allocated. However, unfortunately, not all available funding was used. And I'll explain that a little bit. What's important to remember in the 5310 funding structure is that it's separated into traditional projects and other projects. Traditional would be capital transportation projects, vehicle replacement, fleet expansion, and 55% of the 5310 funds must be used on projects like that. 45% can be used on other types of projects. So in fiscal year 13 and 14, TARC, a designated recipient for 5310, received a total of 14 applications for around $2.5 million, which surpassed the amount of funding available, $1.8 million. However, if you go back and remember the traditional funding needs 55%, we only received 500,000, so we couldn't use the full $1 million for traditional funds, which brought down the amount of funds that you can use for the other types of projects. Therefore, we allocated just over $1 million that year for projects. We couldn't use the full funding, even though there was a demand for 1.9 million for other types of projects. We couldn't use all of it. We could only use just under 500,000. So we left a little bit of money on the table. And the same thing practically happened in the fiscal year 14 and 15, where we received $1.6 million requested. We only had $1.4 million available, but again, the traditional, even though we could have funded up to $807,000, we only received $530,000 for projects, which lowered the amount that we could spend on the other types of projects. So we spent just under $1 million, but we left around $556,000 on the table. Now, what's going to happen in the near future? We only used about 58% of our available 5310 funds in the last 2 years. Because of that, 55% needed to use traditional funding. But we're optimistic that in the future that we're going to start using more of them. TARC currently has a call for project applications out there due October 13th. I got some copies of those if anybody needs those. I know Nancy sent them out to everybody. So we're hoping to see more projects in the traditional category, the fleet expansion, the vehicle replacement, so that we can maybe spend more of the other money on the TARC's expanding their TARC 3 service outside of the area. Maybe we can spend more money on that if there were more of the traditional projects as well. And we are still waiting to hear from the feds about the fiscal year 16 and 17 apportionment, but that will be coming along. All right, so now let's talk about the progress we've made towards achieving the goals and objectives of the plan. Now, as a refresher, there are 6 goals to the plan. First one is to improve access to transportation services for those targeted populations, the older adults and people with disabilities. We want to enhance both the real and perceived safety of those transportation services. We want to encourage coordination among all the transportation providers, both TARC and all the little agencies that take people where they need to go. And we want to enhance the quality assurance of those transportation providers. We want to increase education and outreach about the existing services so that more people can start using them. And we want to expand the availability and capacity of all of those services. So again, those 19 programs in the last 2 years addressed mainly these 3 goals: improving the access to transportation services, enhanced the quality assurance of the providers, and expanded the availability of the services, which is great. However, these other three, enhancing the safety, encouraging coordination, and increasing education outreach, we could probably use a little more help towards reaching those goals. Next, we'll evaluate whether a full update to the plan is actually needed, since it's been 2 years. Now, the findings of the review were, given our restriction of the 55% of the 5310 funding has to be used on traditional projects, and there wasn't a full demand for those projects, we're fairly happy with the progress we've made towards our goals given that restriction. If more capital projects are proposed and funded, perhaps it would open the door towards seeing progress on those other three goals being met through those other types of projects. And again, there is that FAST Act pilot program for innovative projects that would probably fall in that other category typically, but can be funded outside of the 55-45% split. So we encourage some of our agencies to think of innovative projects to go for that program. And we've concluded that there's no major update needed to the plan at this time due to the minimal impact that the FAST Act had on 5310. This plan still remains in compliance with the requirements for that. The same goes for the population information that we updated. If there had been major shifts in population distributions, whether it was the overall population or the population of older adults or disabled people in the communities, that may have triggered an update of the plan, but it didn't. So none of these changes that we have made to the document, updating the service providers' information and inserting higher quality maps, those aren't major enough changes to need a full public review. But we do anticipate continuing to check in once in a while to do these biannual reviews just to see what's been done, how we can do better. And at some point, a review like this will trigger. We do need a full update of a plan, and we'll let you guys know when that happens, and we'll get all of your input when that time comes. So the next step is we're going to present this to TPC also next week, September 22nd. And we do request today that you recommend approval of these minor changes made and the review findings of the biannual review. Are there any questions?
Can I ask?
Sure.
I'm a little unsure about the pilot program for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
Innovative Solutions. Is that a separate funding program that people would apply separately? It's
As I understand it, it's separate. It's a lot smaller of a funding pot, but it is, as I understand it, separate from the normal 50.
You were making me a little nervous there for a minute.
No.
And then I've got just a couple minor corrections.
Sure.
The TARC 3 funded trips, they are work trips for
Right.
people who are eligible for TARC 3, and their job or their home could be outside of the service area, but they're work trips.
Thank
So I
you
just
for
wanted to
clarifying.
clarify that. And the funds that weren't expended in each of those competitive selections were carried to the next time. They don't go away unless we can't get that fiscal year, federal fiscal year's funding expended within the allowed timeframe, which is several years. So
Correct.
we
When
roll
they're
it over.
carried over, do they take with them the 45-55 split?
It's always, we have to, our understanding is, TARC's the designated recipient, so we oversee the process and we apply for funds, and there's separate people who do that. And our understanding is you have to, in each amount that you give out, keep that split. So every time we do a process, what's awarded has to maintain 55-45. It doesn't matter which
So regardless of your-
fiscal year it's
okay.
come from.
Good,
Yeah.
that's good.
Right.
The awards are designated that
Okay.
way, yeah.
Thank you.
Can I pick up on something?
You sure can.
When you said the TARC 3 work related,
The project.
what exactly does that mean? And the reason I'm asking that is before I came here, went to the Americana today. Bullitt County took part in a job fair at the Americana Community Center. A lot of people there looking, not a lot, they said it was kind of slow.
Let me
There
let me
were-
clarify.
Okay, because there were people there that were trying to get but they
No,
can't
no,
get
no.
to Bullitt County. So
TARC 3 is complementary paratransit, which means if someone has a disability that prevents them from using regular fixed route, then they go through an eligibility process to determine if they're eligible for TARC 3 service. TARC 3 will go, it'll mimic the regular bus routes within 3/4 of a mile of a regular route. The TARC project for 5310 funds was so that those people who are TARC 3 eligible and have gone through that process, they're needing to get to a job, and either the job's outside the area that we typically will go, and so we'll go beyond our service area for them, or maybe their job's in the area and they want to become eligible for TARC 3 because it's a work trip and they need to be brought in. Usually it's the other way around. It's already someone who's TARC 3 and, you know. So it wouldn't be for...
So that's not going to help these folks.
No.
Again, we're looking
Unless
at trying to
they're-
get workers. These are people that want to work, but they can't get there.
And 5310, the projects have to be geared to serve older adults and or people who have disabilities. So if the Americana people fit in that category and need to get to a job, they could apply for
A lot of them,
project,
it's not
but-
disabilities, but they're
And then
they're
this won't help
refugees.
them.
Well, they're refugees. They're folks that are they're there trying to learn
Right.
English and things
Right.
like that. So they're having difficulty even expressing. I'm having difficulty
No,
expressing.
I
what they
understand
need, but-
because we used to have other job funding that was just to get people with lower income to jobs, and that was a different funding source, and some of those agencies applied for it at that time, but that funding is not available anymore. It's federal funding that was
It's just a shame that you've got
Yeah.
people that actually want to work but can't get there,
Right.
and jobs that are out there that we need to fill.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I am too.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions for Amanda? Thank you, Amanda, and we do have action that we need, so we need, we want to
Recommendation of
approve or-
approval of the biannual review findings for
Okay.
TPC.
We need a recommendation to, for approval of the findings and updates to the plan. So we have a motion,
So moved.
we have a second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries, thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Lori is going to talk to us about environmental justice and a Title VI update.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff. Actually, it's going to be, sorry, Mary, you're going to be Lori and Sarah today.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, well, while we're getting set up here, let's see. We have Amanda?
Oh. It's mine. I'm sorry.
I could probably just do that.
Let's go on.
That'll work, that'll work. All right. Okay, so I'm sure many of you in this room have had, let's just say, different experiences with environmental justice, different levels of experience with environmental justice or Title VI, especially as it relates to transportation. Many of our LPAs deal with EJ and Title VI issues in hiring, contracting, public involvement. But maybe not as many actually in the context of transportation, such as planning, programming, implementing projects. Although this is definitely not a new concept, but many of you have, maybe you've not dealt with it quite as much. Back in 2006, the MPO actually came out with a document. It was the Community Assessment and Outreach Program. And if any of you are not familiar with it, or if you just like to go back and read it again, it is out on our website. We are currently undergoing an update to that document. We have new data, of course, and we have some other variables, some other vulnerable populations carrying on from where Amanda was telling us with the coordinated plan. And also, at your seats, you have a very nice 3-page several color handout. I did not come up with this. This was from our fine folks at the Federal Highway Administration about Title VI implementation plans. While I'm sure many of you actually have some programs and policies in place, this actually is some guidance as to some of the policy-driven, some of the documentation that you're actually supposed to have in place. So if this looks foreign to you when you're looking at it, please either see one of your staff members, see one of us afterwards, or call your fine folks at your state or with your Federal Highway Administration, because we need to get you squared away. We are currently undergoing a Title VI implementation plan update ourselves. Our old community access and outreach program, the one that we are updating, it was actually a combination of elements. It was a community impact analysis. It also had some elements of our public involvement process in it, which we've since broken out separately. And it also had elements of a Title VI implementation plan. But the effort that we're doing now is to actually make a more formal Title VI implementation plan. Okay, so we're talking about environmental justice, EJ, and Title VI. Often those terms get used interchangeably. There is some overlap to the terms, but they actually do talk about some separate things. When we're talking about over on your left, when we're talking about the EJ executive order, it's the executive order during the Clinton administration, 12898, executive order of 1994, which were federal actions to address environmental justice in minority populations and low-income populations. So you see that in this case, you have some elements of race, ethnicity, and low income from that federal order. On the right, however, this is actually from the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is Title VI, what we normally think of as Title VI, race, color, and national origin. Now, actually, the way Federal Highway treats the Title VI program, it's actually a much larger umbrella. It doesn't just cover the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but it also covers some of those elements from the executive order from 1994, and it covers some other vulnerable populations as well. Elements of ADA, the Age Discrimination Act, and also you see elements there of a 2000 executive order on limited English proficiency populations. So these are, I'm using a Federal Highway term actually, vulnerable, I'm calling them vulnerable communities, potential vulnerable communities. These include EJ populations, Title VI groups, limited English proficiency, and of course others such as people covered by ADA or age discrimination. Now, in our update of our Community Assessment and Outreach Program and our Title VI Implementation Program, here's an example of some of the mapping and analysis that we do. This is under the environmental justice part of the umbrella. These are minority persons, and the minority persons would include persons whose race are identified as Black or African American, Asian American, American Indian or Alaska Natives, or the Native Americans or other Pacific Islanders. These are as people would identify their race on a census form. Or it can be persons of any race who identify their ethnicity as of being of Hispanic or Latino origin. And so the map that we have here is actually from the 2008 to 2012 American Community Survey. We're going to be updating this to as similar with the plan that Amanda was telling you about, updating this to 2010 to 2014 5-year American Community Survey. But these are the percentages, percent minority. So it's persons who identify either as a non-white race or as having some ethnicity, some other sort of ethnicity. And this is, the geography for this is the census block group. We can go down to the census block group with this. Another example, again, under the environmental justice umbrella, would be persons with low income. So essentially, these are persons who identify their household income, the median of which is at or below poverty level. In the formal definition, it's poverty level as defined by Health and Human Services. And I'll give you one more example of mapping. This is persons with disabilities. The census kind of went around and around for several years after the 2000 census, went around for several years trying to redefine and figure out what would be a really good definition of persons with disabilities. And so what they essentially came up with in the end, anyone with serious limitations in hearing, vision, cognitive function, ambulatory function, self-care, or independent living. And so we have that now. That definition finally came in, and the one we have now finally came in 2008. And so we will be able to avail ourselves of that data from the 2010 to 2014 ACS as well. So these are some examples of the mapping and the analysis that we do. And with that, I'm actually going to toss it over to Sarah. And she's going to talk about some of our newest data.
I'll use a little quicker. Yeah, so I'm just here today to talk to you all about some of the data we've been working with, just a few examples, and then what can be done with them and other types of data available. You all actually have a handout in front of you of available data that you can just keep an eye out for while I'm going through some of this stuff. So my first example of things that we've been looking at, like Lori talked about, is poverty data. I just wanted to showcase this to show how it is for the United States, Kentucky, Jefferson County, and then the top 4 tracts in Jefferson County that have the highest levels of poverty. And you can see it starts with the total persons who were surveyed, and then it goes on to the total number of persons who meet that poverty level, I guess. And I want everyone to look at tract number 30, that it has nearly an 87% poverty level. And this tract is actually located between 64 Broadway, 9th and 14th Streets. So that's just one example of where it is the highest. And then tracts 35 and 37, there's a difference there, but they are really high rental areas, lots of student housing and apartments. Tract 37 is between like Central Avenue and Industry Road, behind Papa John's Stadium, and it's adjacent to Churchill Downs. So you have high rentals and lots of students. So there's a little variability there. And then tract 62 is actually most of the Smoketown neighborhood, if you all are familiar with that area. Again, higher percentages of rental properties. And then another example, if you all can see it well, it's the top 10 non-English languages spoken throughout the MPO counties. And you can see throughout, number 1 is consistently ranked as some form of the Spanish language, about 35,000 people regionally for all those counties. But you can see for each county how many people over the age of 5 would speak those languages. But after Spanish being the first, you can see that there's a variety for each. For example, the 3rd most common language spoken in Bull County is Chinese, and then Jefferson, other Asian languages, and then Oldham County, French, Patois Cajun, and then Clark Arabic, and Floyd Chinese. And then regionally, the 3rd most common is the other Asian languages. So this is just good to show you all the types of data we can work with and how it's different based on county to county, so there's not too much generalization going on. And then number 10, for example, you go Bull County, other Pacific languages, and then German, Tagalog, oh gosh, I forgot to say it, Buhatari, and other Asian languages in Vietnamese. And then this is your handout that you have. So different types of data that we have available for you all, in addition to what Lori and I have talked about. range from the minority persons, low income, people with limited English proficiencies, however many computers are available in a household, if they have a computer, if a family has a car, the types of households that there are, and all the other stuff that's available. There's quite a bit, actually. It's really interesting. And then all the uses, you can use it for different environmental and Title VI analyses, different public involvement efforts, different socioeconomic studies, all different types of plans that could go like community assessments and ADA. And the geographies, like Lori briefly mentioned too, you can go from nation, state, county, to the places, your towns and cities, and then your census tracts and census block groups. And that is just a brief example for you all of what we have available and what we can do with it, and what you all can do with it too. So thank you all.
Okay. Any questions for Sarah or Lori?
Can you send me that presentation?
Sure.
Please.
Yep.
And if I may, I'd like to stress, we have pulled out all of the variables that you have on the sheet in front of you. We've pulled that out down for all of those levels that you see on the sheet. And we actually have the geographies that you can plug into ArcView. We have those down to a block group and a tract level. So if you want to do that, there's also margins of error that are contained in the data. It's pretty much kind of everything you need if you need to do a Title VI implementation plan. And I don't know if we can pick on Brittany real quick because I've sent some information over. I sent it to her and some other folks at her office, so I don't know if you've ever gotten to look at any of that.
It's very good. NDOT, and I don't know if Kentucky's doing the same thing, is requiring you to come up with compliance plans over an 18-month period to have everything to get fully Title VI and ADA compliant, or they're going to start withholding federal funds. And so I don't know if Kentucky's doing the same thing.
It's a national thing.
So in Indiana, there's been this big push. While a lot of us have the basics done, ADA, I think we're good, but the Title VI is relatively new to a lot of us. My question is though, we have been just focusing on the EJ areas and the LEPs. I guess we need to be looking then. It's not just the minority and the low income. We also need to be looking at the people with disabilities and the older individuals.
Correct.
We do. Okay, so we do. I guess there's just been this focus on the EJ, so we need to be looking at all of these when we do our data analysis.
What it is this is something that has been in the regs for quite some time. Safety lube, I think going back to ICT. On the transit side, you've had circulars for quite some years now. On the federal highway side, we hadn't provided a whole lot of guidance. Well, our secretary, this is like a big thing to him, considering his background being a mayor, where he come from in Charlotte and stuff. So it's a lot of emphasis on us to push that down to ensure that you all are within compliance of the 23 regs, and I guess for transit, the 49, 48 regs. So it's happening actually.
Anybody who's a sub-recipient is supposed to have some sort of Title VI policy.
Yeah.
And it may actually, what we've found from some of the training that we've gone to, it may actually be that those policies may be housed in another part of your agency. For example, we have a Title VI coordinator here at KIPTA, and she is within our HR. So not necessarily planning, but we do other things that actually feed into what would be a Title VI implementation plan.
Yeah, the big thing is just make sure it covers your programs, your executive officer, whether that's a mayor, director or whatnot, and the program that falls under that umbrella. So, and that's really the big thing. So for a lot of y'all, you might have transit, DHS, HUD type of funds, all that. Just make sure it falls up under the umbrella. This is something that has been signed off by all of the federal agencies under the leadership of the Department of Justice. So
we have materials, and we also have resources that we can direct you all to. And if you need something more intensive, we might be able to direct you to that as well.
And it can be complicated too, because when you push it down to a subcontract, or you're contracting a study or a project, it has to be, you have to have assurances from those people as well as part of your contracting.
That's what I was wondering how, because one of the things that our attorneys had on was a sub-recipient monitoring. So now we can't just put the language in the contracts. We now have to make sure that they're following through on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's going to start, I think, to get more complicated, to make sure all of our contractors, and it's not just the ones we're receiving federal funds for, it's every program your community does. And so I don't know if KIPTA may have some ideas, or maybe Federal Highways, I don't know, but on how to do that sub-recipient monitoring correctly.
It's going to be different for every agency depending on what your abilities to do that are. Putting assurances in the contract and also setting up some way to have something punitive if they don't comply, that's going to be even more difficult. Antonio, by the way, is the new representative from Federal Highways Indiana to this group. So,
and I'll give you some of my background too. I came from Arkansas, and Title VI and EJ was under me. And before that, I was in Nashville, and Title VI and EJ was under me. So I understand maybe the frustration or the concern, but it's just one of those things. It's going to be different based on the organization. It's something that's been in the regs for a long time, and it really is just going to be very dependent upon your program on how you assess those that you funnel money to.
Well, does it kind of, like the ADA transition plans, which we had for our public facilities, but we didn't have it within the public right of way. And so it's expanded. Is this going to be looking at distribution of our funding within our?
So, and not to really go that far in details, but I know in terms of the planning rule, it's final now, but there's some other rules that's out there that's causing a lot of people's headaches. But within that planning rule, in terms of your performance measures and things like that, there's extensive conversation about how you engage your populations. And so essentially that is, whether it's, I don't know if it comes out and blatantly say Title VI, but essentially that is talking about that. And so your Title VI plan, your EJ plan, essentially is saying, okay, this is how we're going to engage those populations that historically in the United States of America has been left out of the process. And then as far as your projects are concerned, what you're talking about is how you take that planning process into the NEPA process, which for what all of us are trying to do is get those projects on the books so we can do whatever we're trying to do. So all those things are interconnected.
Let me put it something specific, like we're building out bicycle facilities. So we need to have a strategy that in that bike master plan, for example, a section that really addresses that Title VI, because we are working our way west into some of the hotter spots, but where the folks don't have cars. So it's pretty obvious that they don't have that choice, and so may use those facilities more than those on the east end. But am I going to have to drill down that far in our planning documents?
I mean, it's hard to say because I haven't seen what you're talking about.
Okay.
What I would say is send your MPO that question. MPO, send that question either me or Greg, and then we can provide some guidance from there.
The whole goal of this is not necessarily to find out where a particular population lives, or it's to treat everyone equally, and to the impact that we have for a transportation facility shouldn't be adverse to one group over another, that everybody can benefit from it. So bike facilities, for instance, you should just engage any part of the public that would be involved with the project and or be affected by it. And
Well,
that's
we do. We
a
try.
rough guideline we should have for everything that we do.
No, I believe our public outreaches, policies, processes are solid, but it's, I just wondered whether we were supposed to kind of show a balance of funding to certain parts of our community.
That's not really what it's about.
No,
Okay.
we're not saying show a balance of funding. We
Okay.
are saying assess your community to ensure that there is not consistently adverse impact on particular groups versus other groups.
Okay.
And that everyone has the opportunity.
Correct. Access, whatever service you provide, access. How do they access those services?
All right, Aida, you had a question.
I don't have a question. I would like to share some information in regards to Title VI for transit and some national level trends. Obviously, Federal Transit Administration has firmly regulated Title VI, especially since Secretary Fox is in charge. And 3 years ago, there was major overhaul of Title VI planning documents for transit agencies. So we had major update in 2013, and every 3 years, they basically provide a circular to see what the update is. This year, it's not expected to be major change, but in 2013 was new census data analysis, it's firmly regulated data collection and plan implementation, as well mitigation actions and all that. So TARC has a really good Title VI plan that is uploaded to FTA website without any glitches in step one. The other thing is that nationally there is a really trend to address Title VI data collection, analysis, and plan implementation. And currently, Transportation Cooperative Research Program that operates under umbrella of National Academy of Science is developing guidelines for Title VI data collection, analysis, and plan implementation. This project is specifically focused on MPOs, but also on other projects and transit agencies. I am lucky to be part of this project at the national level and work with the TCRP project team. So the status of the project is right now, they are about to confirm consultant selection. And after that, for about 18 months, these consultants will select maybe 4 to 6 to 10, depending on the budget, MPOs at the national level, work with them and see how they collect data, analyze, and basically implement Title VI, and then hopefully a good guidelines document will be developed that would be almost like a prescription to help every agency, rural and urban, to address Title VI. The problem is that Title VI is really complex and complicated, and many agencies that don't have resources are not able to analyze that. Luckily, you guys have a wonderful resource for data collection here for our counties. That's extremely helpful, but the guidelines, hopefully, that will be available in about a year and a half should be a great help, and then we will know how nationally MPOs actually deal with that. I think it will be good help for us. And at some point, I would like to hear how are we addressing actually Title VI implementation plan update, because what you provided is just a baseline and foundation for next steps. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions for Lori or Sarah? Okay, thanks. All right, Adam is going to tell us all about interactive project maps.
All right. Well, essentially, we just added a couple new interactive maps, just showing you simply the TIP and the MTP projects. I use the word simply just because we found that things work faster if you keep them simple. There's still going to be ways inside the document to view everything and all the information related to the projects, but these are just simple viewer things, and that could lead you to find some things that you might be interested in and look to see where the current projects are. As soon as the screen pulls up, Zach's going to show you where you can find them on our website, and just go through a few things real quickly just to let you know what's on there and what you can see. So here it should go.
Hi, my name's Zach. It's my first time presenting here. So, I'm with KIPTA in the GIS department here. And creating online map resources, it's always been kind of on the table. And we've messed around with it in the past. This past year, I went to the Esri conference in San Diego, and they were really pushing this new format that seemed to make it real easy to present a lot of different information in one place. And so I came back and messed around with it and showed it to some of the transportation staff, and we worked together to build these online, basically just viewing applications for now. But so this is our homepage. We went live with these a couple weeks ago. So you just come to our homepage and scroll down, and we'll look at the tip first. This is all hosted by Esri through their ArcGIS Online program. And so these are basically all each one of these tabs just break down the projects into different classifications. And this first one is all the projects in the tip. And you can zoom in to wherever you would like. And so we'll zoom down here into St. Matthews, let's say, and look at this project on Hubbard's Lane, and it gives you a description. All this can be edited, and we just included the information we thought the public might be interested in. It's very much like Google in that you can just click on the imagery if you would like and see what's around it. And then if you just wanted to look at the specific bike projects, you can click on those and zoom in to the specific bike projects, bridge projects. And these same classifications are on our MTP map format as well. And so I'll just click through these and give you a quick example of all of them. The loading times, basically, it's all dependent on your server. So sometimes here it's fast and sometimes it's not. Road projects, and when you're in here, you can also choose to, if you just want to look at the line projects, you could turn the points off, vice versa. If you wanted to turn off the boundary, you could. And then everything in here is almost a hyperlink to somewhere else. So if you clicked on this, it'll take you, open a new tab right back to the transportation page, and then you can go to the home page, and we'll look at the MTP plan. And it follows pretty much the same format as the tip one I just showed you. Another tool that you can use in here is to search by address. So I'll just type in my address here. And it'll zoom me straight to where my house is. And I can zoom out and look at projects near me. And this is one that I've had to deal with the past couple of years. It's the Cooper Chapel Road reconstruction. But you know, this is good for any public user. They could get on and type in their address and zoom around, and I could say, oh, I want to see what bike projects are happening near my work. Because I like to ride my bike at lunch. So, you know, I type in Kipta's address. Zoom me to Kipta, and then I say I want to look at some satellite imagery, and this is the project near me, and it's the Bluegrass Industrial Bike Corridor project. And so it's just a good, simple resource. I think it's pretty user-friendly for anyone who's gotten on a computer and gotten on Google Maps. You could navigate through all this and figure it out pretty easily. So that's pretty much it.
Well, there's a print button if you want to print. So if there's a project you want to take a closer look at or print and show someone else, you can do that. Also on the left there's some links where if you want to leave a comment about a project, you can also do that. And then there's just some basic information about the things. If once that clicks on, like say, our highlights of project, it also pulls up the KIPTA ID number. So you can either go to our plan, which is on our website, and look for more information about that if you require it, or you can call us and we can give you more detailed and in-depth information about that project. So it's just like Zach said, it's a basic tool. We kept it simple so that way it's easy to use and loads fast. But it's just a way of us giving out different information that in the past was just a static map. Catching up a little bit to the times and making everything easier to use and find.
Very good. Thank you, Adam and Zach. Any questions?
So how often is this updated?
Every time there's a change.
Well, with a little bit of a lag, but we're going to try to catch it after amendments and then try to catch it after administrative modifications as well, as quickly as we can, because those happen monthly.
Good stuff. And this is, we're getting our foot in the door here of providing a lot of online resources for all of you, because the project application process that we're working on with the new project management process that we're adopting will ask a lot of questions that will help you, we think anyway, develop the scope of your project better and be able to prepare better schedules. So that the online resources that we're going to be providing will be traffic count data, congestion data, where the transit is, a lot of different things that you can use when you scope your projects. So that's coming in the next few months in addition to these.
And I believe we're going to build it in the same format, where you just click on the tab at the top, and it'll be level of service or crash data or Title 6. So
We'll have red flag, environmental, floodplains, archaeological, historic, where we can get that information, and we'll provide that to you through this same application.
Could you send us a link every time when the maps are updated, basically after the one update? Link to all
link
the
every
PCC
time.
members.
Send you a link
Yeah.
every time it's
A link to
updated?
the interactive maps.
Yeah, it's all gonna be, it's gonna be the same link, so it'll be on the same spot on the website.
Okay.
And it's in both the homepage and it's also on the pages for each plan.
That's fine.
We'll just, okay.
Does it show the date of the last update?
Yeah.
and on the about
Yeah.
tab in the middle, it's not up anymore, but at the bottom it automatically fills out last modified 8/1/16 at 3:59 p.m.
Real good. Thanks. Good stuff.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adam and Zach. All right, Larry, you're going to talk to us about the Kite Award.
Yes, sir. We are in the second year, the second annual presentation of the Kite Award. For those of you who were not here last year, KIPTA staff came up with the idea to recognize a project that is outstanding in our region, that was either completed or even underway in 2016. Last year's winner was 21st Century Parks, which was a lot of federal dollars, a lot of state dollars, a lot of local dollars went into that project. It's wildly successful and was a good recipient, a good choice for that award. We are starting the process again. Some of the information was in your packet in that email, but I will be sending you another email on Friday just to remind everyone. It's open to a nomination by any TTCC or TPC member. So if you are not the designated member, then get with that person and let them submit the application. Nominations need to be in by October 7th, and we'll be selecting in that a nominating group. Will sort through all the applications and rank them, make recommendations to the selection committee. That nominating working group will be a representative from NDOT, one from KYTC, one from TARC, and then KIPTA staff will make our recommendations as well. Then the final selection will be made by the TPC chairman and vice chairman. And that will be announced at the annual meeting in November. The winner will be announced.
Larry, this is not limited to transportation project.
It really should be something that was in the tip.
Okay.
Yes. That was our limitation that we put on it last time. So I think it needs to be recognized as a project. Of course, that also includes programs. It's not just a infrastructure project. Anything that was actually in the tip.
Okay.
That's it.
Great. Thanks, Larry. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Larry? Any other business for the good of the order? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion to adjourn. I get a second?
Second.
And all those in favor? All right. Nobody opposed? All right.